Shalom. Let me get straight into this lesson, but this lesson was inspired by a scoffer. Believe it or not, a so-called white person, Edomite. So the Edomite commented on one of my lessons, and these so-called white people, these Edomites, they do this in their little circles. They don't think we know about it, but they make mockery when we say we was rulers in so-called Europe and all over the world. They make mockery of that because they can't comprehend that that's the truth, and they have that cognitive dissonance, right? When they did, because they've been miseducated as well, and they jealous, and they hate Jake. They hate so-called black men. So anytime we relinquish that power, that we had power and authority at one time, they laugh and they mock it, right? Because they don't line up with their narratives. And the so-called white man wants you to think that he always been in power, but that's not true. So I'm gonna play this little short video, then I'm gonna get it to Chat GPT. It's gonna break down this psychology, you know what I'm saying, of these devils. So check this out.
Also, furthermore, Moors and Egyptians, they're functionally black. They have black skin. Are you gonna say they're Jewish?
Are black?
Yeah, you're gonna say they're Jewish? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, no.
We was kangz. What you mean? No, seriously though. Seriously.
Go ahead.
I'm serious. But seriously.
No, so like, let's see.
Help us find a cure for
So you saw that. Let me go back into. Give me 1 second. All right, so Salakia. And you got a multitude of these so-called white people that have been miseducated as well. They don't know about none of this history, and they don't want to hear none of this history. But we're going to bring it out, whether you like it or not. And that scoffer, you need to learn something. But let me play this Chat GPT, but I'm going to go take you into the psychology of why they think this. And a lot of Jakes think this too. You saw that video. The Jake was, they made mockery out of him, but they was laughing and, pretty much scoffing Jake. When we try to get them the history, they don't want to hear it. It's like, cover your ears up, la, 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 la. All right, let me play this.
And it touches on deep historical, cultural, and psychological issues. Here's a...
As a matter of fact, I'm gonna show you all the rulers of so-called Europe. They were Israelites. They was, that's been relabeled so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American people in today's terminology. But our true ethnicity is Hebrew Israelites. That's where we descend from. All these new made-up pseudoscience, it's all to put confusion on you, and the so-called white man want to control the narrative. All right, let's get into this.
Clear breakdown of why many white people, and even some others, find it hard to believe or react mockingly to the idea that black people ruled parts of what's now Europe for centuries. 1. Eurocentric historical narrative. For centuries, history was written and controlled by European scholars during and after colonialism.
Edomites.
They built a narrative that placed Europeans as the center of civilization and progress, while portraying Africa and non-white people as primitive or marginal. If you grow up in a system where history books show all great empires as white, it's hard to imagine otherwise without unlearning a lifetime of messaging. Racial bias and psychological conditioning. White supremacy isn't just about power, it's about belief systems. Many people have been conditioned to subconsciously associate whiteness with intelligence, leadership, and advancement. When they hear about African rulers, black nobility, or Moors...
Let me say this, we're not black. Black and African, that's our new speak. We Hebrew Israelites, that's who was ruling so-called Europe, and Europe is a new... So you dumb Edomite Christians don't know nothing, and just you dumb Edomites in general. You don't know nothing. You jealous, very jealous. You know what I'm saying, of our people. So let's get more into this.
Ruling Europe, it clashes with that ingrained worldview, and mockery often becomes a defense mechanism to avoid facing that discomfort.
You hear that?
#3, suppression.
So when they mock, they don't want to. Matter of fact, let me go read that again. It says, and mockery often becomes a defense mechanism because they hurt, they jealous, right? That's that hatred, to avoid facing that discomfort. Let's keep going.
An erasure of historical evidence. A lot of visual and written evidence of black influence in European history has been altered, destroyed, or reinterpreted. For instance, Medieval paintings were lightened in later restorations. Black saints or nobles were renamed or whitened in later iconography. The Moorish influence in Spain and parts of Italy is often downplayed or dismissed as Arab rather than African. So when someone brings it up, people claim there's no proof, ignoring that much of the proof was systematically hidden.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you proof and through all my this is actually out of the book. Let me get the book. Matter of fact, let me get the several books for you, for that Edomite, you know what I'm saying, and for you other Edomites. All right, the information that I'm pulling this out of. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go through these books again. Nature Knows No Color Line. The author is J.A. Rogers. Okay, then I got the other one, the Negro Question Part 4, The Missing Link, and then the Rulers of what's my other book? I'm looking for it. Can't find it. Okay, the Black So-Called Kings of Europe. That's a book. And so on and so forth. I can't find the other ones because they're everywhere. But yeah, so I'm going to show you pictures and snapshots out of these books to show you unrefutable proof that so-called black people, Native American and Hispanic, which is known as these bywords today, ruled Europe. So let's get into this. And these wasn't slaves. These actually was rulers. This is something that you weren't taught in your failing education system. That's why the education system in America is ranked so low, because the people are stupid and they ignorant. Look at this. These rulers, Israelites. These ain't no slaves. Crowns, so on and so forth. I'm just gonna keep going through them. And so, this was during the Holy Roman Empire. And then you had the Moor Kingdom, so-called Moor. With the Moors, that just means so-called black. It's not like a ethnicity or anything like that. These are Israelites. It's in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. You see coats of arms. Coats of arms. Let me show you what this is. These was noble families that actually was ruling and controlling wealth and controlling all of what we know today as so-called Europe. And it's that cognitive dissonance that so-called white people don't want to face, because it brings them great discomfort because of the jealousy and hatred. Yeah, let's keep going. So yeah, we was kangz. They say that to do the mockery, kangz. Yeah, we was kings, right? And I'm just gonna just keep scrolling through them. Right, it says the families with names of Negro origin, Upper Highland, Portuguese, and German. And you see these so-called black people was ruling, point blank period. Note, it says at the top, Negro in coats of arms of noble families, French, Dutch, Belgian families, and names of Negro. You see all these pictures. And that's why they gave it a narrative, because that's why they controlled the school system, that you just was Africans. They put that African name on you. That word African is a Latin word. They renamed the continent Africa and then started calling people African. And if you're supposed to be African, what tribe do you come from? You know how vast what we know as Africa is? It's just more confusion. That's why they call you African American, put that straight confusion on you. It says French, Italian, Spanish, Polish families. 1 second. Okay, right here. It says at the bottom, it says, note the Negroes lower with crowns and bishop mitres. Right, you hear this? You see this? Salakia. And it goes on and on. And this scares, this terrifies so-called white people. That's why they'll make mockery, as the chat GPT went into the psychology why they do that. This is why they mock, because they don't know, they're dumbed down too. They've got a poor education. A lot of these, and just Jake in general, I'm talking about our people too. They don't know what's going on. They're very ignorant to history because of all the lies. You look at this. It says British families. I'm at the bottom. The Moors of Yorkshire, including Sir Thomas More, Chancellor of Henry, I think that's the 8th. So these are so-called black people ruling all over Europe, in Ireland, and Britain, and what's the other one? France, so on and so forth. Right here, it says families with names of Negro origin. These ain't slaves, these rulers. Because the so-called white man, if it left up to him, he'll say these were slaves. Crazy, man. It says Central Europe, European at the bottom. so-called Central Europe. Goes on and on. Keep going. Right here, this is actually, I forget what, I have to do a lesson on this. The Elder Malcolm went into this history. Who this guy is right here, I think is Maurice, something like that. And these are kings, rulers. This was during the so-called the Holy Roman Empire. Right here. It goes on and on. And so-called white people was actually subjects. They was actually pushed into the Caucasus Mountains. Give me 1 second. Right, so I'm gonna keep going, keep scrolling. And you see it goes on and on. These ain't no slaves, and these are kings. These are kangz that make mockery of you devils. You know? And Jake, that's why I say Jake actually did a lot of this wickedness, you know what I'm saying, with the Catholic and all that. So, you know, so that's a lot of history to get into, right? 1 second. Right? It goes on and on. So they want you to think that's all you was slaves. That's not true. And it goes on and on. Like I said, I'll be all day going through all the images. And Lord willing, I can start doing lessons going into these individuals and break down it, you know, so you can know who they are. And King James was a so-called black man queen, you know, so-called queens, you know, so-called. I say that because the word queen, you know, I don't even want to get into all that, but princesses or whatever. It goes on and on. And this is the history that terrifies the so-called white man. Right here is King James, the real King James. The King James that you see on the internet is a forgery. That's a lie. The real King James was a so-called black man you see right here on this coinage. Jacob, you know what I'm saying? Because when you go back into the name James, it really is supposed to be Jacob. Because that was, you know, going back to our forefather Jacob, proving that the King James was an Israelite. Matter of fact, let me show you that real quick. Let me show you that. 1 second. So right here proving my point, it says at the top, it says, yes, Jacob and James are variants of the same name, stemming from the Hebrew Yaquab. That's what Jacob's real name. And Lord willing, I got this book. I'm be going into different Hebrew names, the proper Hebrew names, instead of calling them these English names, because that takes from the true potency of, you know, our history. Because Jacob, like these Edomites use these names because this is what they do. But Jacob's real name was Yaquab in the Hebrew tongue. The name was transliterated into Greek, which became Jacob, Icomus, in Latin. Over centuries through Old French, the name was angelicized into English James. So there you go. So the name James goes back into Jacob. You know what I'm saying? Proving that he was an Israelite. King James was an Israelite. But I go further into that. I break the name down further, but you get the point of it. That's why on that coin, let me show you. It says Jacob right here. As you can see kind of at the top. He's either I think that's an I, because you know the J was created in 1524, so that might be an I at the top. That's what it looked like, you know. And then IACOB. Yeah, so Jacob. He's with an I because it does J. It's either with an I or J, because I don't know when this coin was made. But prior to the letter J being created, they used I in the place of J. That makes sense. But yeah, showing you that so-called black men were kangz to make mockery out of you. And hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Allah Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shah, Bahashim Rachak Kodash. We was kings back then. We're going to be kings again. Shalom.